Hi everyone, CGTO here, back with another video. If you're a new viewer on my channel, welcome to CGTO. So basically on my channel I cover a lot of Japanese orientated stuff, normally covered around Japanese video games and stuff like that. But for this video in particular, for those of you or some of my viewers or new viewers, this video will be talking about should you learn Japanese in 2023. I'll be covering more topics obviously as time goes on, probably might even do it daily if I'm kind of doing the style where it's off the cuff, I don't have a script and I'm just talking from my own experiences, which I can do naturally. But anyhow, I'll be talking to you guys briefly about my own experience with Japanese and obviously to kind of give you guys a background on where I'm coming from, and then we'll go on to the question of should you learn Japanese in 2023. Starting off, we do have me back when I was like 19, and at the time my business teacher, Mr. Wan or Tuan or Sun, or I can't remember his name now, but he did recommend for me to learn an Asian language at the time. Well, he did say mostly like Eastern Asian language, so I was like, okay, so obviously you have like Chinese Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Japanese. At the time I did actually want to learn Mandarin because I felt like I knew more about Chinese culture than I knew about Korean or Japanese culture at the time, so I was more interested in Mandarin. But it dawned upon me, and also because I did want to use it for like my business studies, because that was my major as well, which I wanted to do at university. So when I finally got around to maybe my second week of Mandarin, like learning Mandarin, because I also had like a few Chinese people that I knew as well who are completely fluent in English, and I was like, I had like a realization where I was like, man, I can't even compete. It's like, if these guys are fluent in like both English and Mandarin or Cantonese by the age of say 14 or even 12, I'm like, then I'm gonna spend the next 4 years learning it. And there's like a large Chinese population in the UK as well as a whole, and it's like, how am I gonna compete? Like, it didn't really make much sense to me. Obviously the same argument could have been said for Japanese, but in my case there isn't a large Japanese population in the UK, so I felt like I had a competitive angle in that respect. So basically, yeah, I spent maybe half a year learning Japanese, obviously by a program named Rosetta Stone. Apparently, I didn't know, back then it was like a standalone program, but apparently now it's like an online only program. So like, yeah, I have no idea what's going on with that. But when I studied with the basic characters like hiragana and katakanas. That's your building blocks. I'll do like a full depth video if you guys want later on. But I studied that, and then I finished the course. It took me about 2 months, I believe, or something like that. And then I went back to it maybe half a year later, and then I did it with kanji. And then also during that like downtime period, I had pen pals, so I was in like communication with pen pals. I don't know if you guys don't know pen pals, then maybe like net pals. I don't, you don't even use that term anymore, do you? But just people who are learning your language. I mean, I guess more like a more contemporary thing would be like a Hellolingo, or see, I'm completely out of the loop, but I'm sure you guys would know what app I'm talking about. So I went also during my time at university. My major wasn't in Japanese, but I was fortunately able to study in Japan abroad for like a year, and somehow it turned out to be cheaper to study abroad in Japan than it was to study back in England, which it really made, I mean, it's terrible in England. But anyhow, moving apart from that, I came back to England. There were a few years where I didn't use any Japanese at all, and then fortunately I did actually go back to Japan to live and work there for a few years as an English teacher, or eikaiwa no sensei, or whatever you're gonna call it. So I did all of that, I did the whole shebang basically, I got what I wanted out of it. So using all of that experience I have now, I will kind of try my best to guide you guys to the best way to learn Japanese, or if you should even learn Japanese to begin with in 2023. The major questions obviously I'll be asking will be, what is your motivation for learning Japanese? Are you doing it as a hobby? If you're doing it as a hobby alone, it's definitely worth it, because for me personally, when I study Japanese, or even today when I don't study as much, but when I go about it like bit by bit, for me personally, Japanese is like a puzzle. When you conjugate, obviously the conjugations like the verbs and whatever aren't that difficult. I'd say probably like a Latin language like French or Spanish, it's technically harder when you conjugate all the verbs like past tense and conjugatives and whatever. But for me personally, I'm more like a kanji no gariben. Like, I'm very hardcore kanji nerd. So I like the conjugations in the kanji. For me, that feels like a challenge. It feels fun. It feels, even though it is difficult, it's more rewarding in terms of a long-term goal. So if you're doing it as a hobby, you want something interesting, it will definitely fill in that niche that you want. If you want to learn Japanese, maybe to improve your repertoire, if you're a translator or you're an interpreter who does other languages but not maybe Japanese, or maybe you want to branch out to something more exotic, it definitely helps you out in that regard as well. Especially with a lot of Japanese companies, they are starting to branch out more to Western companies. Like before, say it was only like America, but now I see like Japanese companies expanding out to nearly everywhere now. And obviously when it comes to Japanese media, they are basically the kings of what they do. So that's always a good thing to have, especially if you're an interpreter as well. It depends as well, obviously, what language you're starting from. If you're a native English speaker or maybe near enough fluent, obviously it's going to be completely different to learning Japanese. But if you're already starting from, say, another Asian language, like a Eastern Asian language, because I know Southern Eastern Asian languages can be quite different from Japanese as well, so you can't even use that as like a footstool to like go apart there. But in terms of pronunciation, from what I've seen and met from other people and like heard from everyone else as well, is that definitely Portuguese and Spanish seem to be the best kind of starting blocks as a European if you want to learn Japanese, because the pronunciation is basically the same. Like, I don't know, let me try to do a bad British accent speaking Japanese if I can even do that. As soon as I try to imitate something, I can't even do it now. Okay, you guys will probably have to catch me drunk or whatever, but you can just feel it. I mean, I can feel it. It's like or something like that. I've got my terrible poor accent. But yeah, so if you guys want to like learn it from a starting block and you're from Europe, definitely if you're like Spanish or Portuguese, or you already know Spanish and Portuguese, like accents and stuff like that, it will definitely help you in the long term. If you're maybe, I'm thinking to myself now, where else maybe? I can't even give any more examples, unfortunately, because my grasp of languages is only like European based and somewhat Asian based. So if you're like in Africa, I can't really help you, unfortunately, because I just have no basis of what the like grammar is actually like functioning like. So yeah, we've covered if you want to study it as a hobby, if you want to do it as an extension of your translation or interpretation work. So that's all covered and whatever. Let me think of something else. Maybe if you want to learn Japanese, should you learn Japanese in 2023? On another note, yeah, that is kind of interesting now I think about it. Maybe for whatever reason you want to pick up Japanese skills. I don't recommend it because the amount like because now we're really branching off to the unknown territory there. But like, I've met some guys in my time while in Japan, like foreign guys, like certain foreign guys who are like, man, I like Japanese girls, man. And I feel like it's a race to learn Japanese if you just want to like hook up with girls, if that's your main objective, like you just want to like hook up with Japanese girls. Because for me personally, a good amount of people I've seen hook up with Japanese girls can't even speak Japanese at all. So if you guys just want to go for it, like go for it. Like, don't learn Japanese, just go with like speak whatever. Obviously, probably you have to speak English to at least have some kind of communication like established. But I've seen many a guy just like have no like Japanese experience at all, just like hook up with girls. So if you want to hook up with girls because they're Japanese and learn the Japanese language, I feel like it's a waste of time. Just go for it, dude. Like, do what you want to do. Same thing for girls too. If you were like want to hook up with a Japanese guy, you don't need to know Japanese. I mean, I would say it would help, but if that's your main goal as a whole, just like screw it. Just speak English and go for it. Live your best life. And I don't know, is there anything else? Should you learn Japanese in 2023? See, I'm writing this video off the cuff, so I'm sure you guys could probably add more stuff and I could do like a part 2 or something like that. But for me personally, I feel like that's about it, like giving it a basic feel. Obviously, I don't want the video to be like a whole hour, me talking about this topic and you guys like, oh man, I'm zoning out. I just want to talk about a topic, get there and be done with it, essentially. So yeah, I'm about to wrap up the video. If you guys have any feedback, or maybe you have any questions about this topic as a whole that I might have missed out on, obviously, feel free to hit me up in the comment section and I'll be happy to get back to you. Until next time, take care and goodbye.